My boss fired me to cut costs. Then the entire company system crashed. In the construction world, there is a concept called a load-bearing wall. It might look like just another piece of drywall, maybe it's ugly, maybe it's in the way of your open concept design, but if you remove it, the roof collapses. For 15 years, I was a load-bearing employee. I was the invisible guy in the server room, the one who made sure the emails went through and the trucks left the loading dock. I was the only thing standing between a multi-million-dollar logistics company and total silence. But my new boss didn't see a load-bearing wall. He just saw an expensive line item on a spreadsheet. He saw dead weight. He thought he could fire me on a Friday afternoon to save a few $1,000 a year. He thought he was a genius. He was wrong. By Monday morning, the company was burning through $100,000 a day in losses. By Tuesday, the panic set in. And by Wednesday, he was on the phone begging me to come back. But by then, I wasn't an employee anymore. I was an external consultant, and my price had just gone up. This isn't just a story about bad management. It's a story about what happens when arrogance meets reality. Here is how I watched my former company melt down from the comfort of my fishing boat. Let's go back to the beginning. My name is Mark, or at least that's what we'll use for this story to keep the lawyers happy. I've been working in IT for 20 years. For the last 15 of those years, I was the Senior Systems Administrator for a mid-sized logistics company. I was the guy in the hoodie who kept the servers humming while everyone else panicked. When I say mid-sized, I mean we moved about $3 million worth of freight every single day. If the truck stopped moving for an hour, people started sweating in boardrooms. If they stopped for a day, heads would roll. My job, simply put, was to make sure the trucks never stopped. Now, you have to understand something about corporate IT in older companies. It's not like the movies. It's not sleek glass server rooms and holographic interfaces. It's messy. It's duct tape and prayers. Our core system, the digital brain that tracked every single pallet from warehouse to truck, was built in the late 90s. It was a Frankenstein monster of ancient code that nobody used anymore. It was what we call spaghetti code. It was tangled, fragile, and absolutely critical. Over 15 years, everyone else who helped build that system had left, retired, or died. I was the last one. The lone survivor. I was the only person in the entire building who knew exactly which digital wire to wiggle when the whole thing threatened to crash. I had built a delicate ecosystem of automated scripts, little programs running on my local machine that acted like life support for the main server. Every morning at 3 a.m., my scripts would wake up, clean the database's messy errors, reboot the services in a specific order, and get everything ready for the 6 a.m. shift. Without those scripts, the system would choke on its own data within 24 hours. To give you an idea of what I was dealing with, imagine a library where half the books are written in a language that died in the 17th century, and the librarian is a blindfolded monkey. That was our server architecture. The core database was built on a platform that hadn't been updated since 2008. It was running on a version of Windows Server that Microsoft stopped supporting when Obama was still in his first term. Why? Because the original code contained a specific, hard-coded dependency that would break instantly if we upgraded anything. We called it the Beast. Every day, the Beast ingested thousands of orders from Amazon, eBay, and direct retailers. It had to translate these orders into pick lists for the forklifts, shipping labels for FedEx, and invoices for the finance department. If the Beast stumbled even for a second, the ripple effect was instant. A 1-second lag in the database meant a label printed with the wrong barcode. A wrong barcode meant a package went to the wrong chute. A package in the wrong chute meant a truck left with missing inventory.
And the only thing keeping the beast tame was me. I had memorized the sound of the hard drive spinning. I could walk into the server room, close my eyes, and tell you a fan 3 on rack 4 was vibrating differently. That's not a skill you learn in a boot camp. That's a scar you earn from 10 years of sleepless nights. My scripts didn't just reboot things, they performed open-heart surgery on the data every night. They caught orphaned records that would otherwise clog the arteries of our network. I had automated myself out of the repetitive work so I could focus on the impending doom of hardware failure. But to an outsider, to someone looking at a spreadsheet, it just looked like a quiet room with blinking green lights. For a long time, this was fine. The old CEO knew my value. He paid me well, left me in my dark office, and let me work my magic. I was the invisible hand keeping the chaos at bay. And then, 6 months ago, the old CEO retired to Florida. Enter Gary. Gary was the new VP of Operations. Gary was 30 years old, had a very expensive MBA, wore suits that cost more than my car, and spoke entirely in corporate buzzwords. He loved words like synergy, streamlining, and his favorite, cut costs. From day one, Gary didn't like me. To Gary, an IT department that is working perfectly looks like an IT department that is doing nothing. When he walked past my office, he didn't see me putting out digital fires before they started. He just saw a middle-aged guy in a hoodie staring at graphs on a screen, drinking coffee. He saw a 6-figure salary that he could trim to make his quarterly bonus look bigger. The conflict started in the weekly department head meetings. "Mark," Gary said, leaning back in his chair, spinning a pen, "I'm looking at the budget. You're the highest-paid non-management employee here, and frankly, I don't see the ROI. Return on investment. What is it you actually do all day?" I tried to explain. I used analogies. I said, "Gary, think of me as the guy holding up the dam. Just because my arms aren't moving doesn't mean I'm not working." He rolled his eyes. Sounds like fear-mongering to me. I had a consultant look at our systems. They said we should be on the cloud. They said your legacy hardware is a money pit. "The consultant is right about the hardware being old," I said, trying to keep my voice level. "But moving to the cloud is a 2-year, $5 million project. Until then, you need me to keep the old lights on." Gary didn't want to hear about $5 million projects. He wanted quick wins. Let me tell you about the mouse jiggler incident. This perfectly summarizes working for Gary. About 2 months into his reign of terror, Gary installed tracking software on all our workstations. He wanted to measure active screen time. Now remember, I'm a SysAdmin. My work involves starting a complex process like a database migration or a backup verification, and then waiting for 45 minutes while the progress bar crawls across the screen. Gary called me into his office holding a printout. "Mark," he tapped the paper, "I noticed that last Tuesday between 2 p.m. and 3 p.m., your mouse cursor didn't move for 40 minutes. Were you napping?" I stared at him. "Gary, I was running the monthly integrity check on the archive drives. If I touched the machine while that's running, it could corrupt the index. I was literally standing 3 feet away watching the screen." "Well," he replied, adjusting his tie, "the software flags it as idle time, and idle time is theft of company resources. Moving forward, I want you to make sure you are actively clicking something at least once every 5 minutes." I was stunned. "You want me to randomly click on things on a production server just to satisfy a piece of spyware?" "I want you to demonstrate value," he said. That was the moment I emotionally checked out. I realized that Gary didn't care about the trucks moving. He didn't care about the millions of dollars in revenue. He cared about the metrics on his dashboard being green. He was playing a video game where the score was efficiency, and he was losing because he didn't understand the rules. So, I wrote a tiny script that moved my mouse cursor 1 pixel to the right and then back every 60 seconds. Gary's report showed 100% activity the next week, and he praised me for my improved work ethic. That's who I was dealing with, a man who thought a wiggling mouse was more important than a stable server. Over the next 3 months, he made my life miserable. He denied my request for new backup drives. He moved my office from a quiet corner right next to the noisy break room. He started demanding daily reports documenting every minute of my time. I could see the writing on the wall. I started polishing my resume just in case. The end came on a Friday afternoon, the classic time to fire someone. Gary called me into his office. HR was already there, looking uncomfortable with a manila folder on the desk. "Have a seat, Mark," Gary said, looking weirdly smug. "We've decided to eliminate your position as part of a strategic restructuring." Translation: I'm firing you to save money because I think your job is useless.
We're outsourcing your responsibilities to an offshore team. Much more cost-effective, he added. I looked at him. I looked at HR. A million things went through my mind. I wanted to scream. I wanted to grab him by his expensive lapels and shake him. I wanted to explain one last time about the 3 a.m. scripts. I wanted to tell him about the database fragmentation bug that only I knew how to patch. I opened my mouth to warn him, and then I closed it. Why? I thought. Why bother? He hasn't listened for 6 months. Let him learn. It was the purest moment of malicious compliance of my life. "Okay," I said calmly. Gary looked disappointed. He wanted a fight. He wanted me to beg. "Okay, that's it?" he asked. "That's it. You're the boss, Gary. If you think you don't need me, you don't need me." I signed the paperwork. They gave me 2 weeks of severance pay, which was an insult after 15 years, and told me to pack my desk immediately. Security would escort me out. As I packed up my personal belongings into a cardboard box, I came across my external hard drive. This drive contained years of my personal notes, my custom tools, and yes, the source code for those vital 3 a.m. maintenance scripts. They were my intellectual property, written on my own time to make my job manageable. I unplugged the drive and dropped it into the box. The company servers were now running on autopilot with no mechanic on duty. The ticking clock had started. The weekend was wonderful. I slept in, I went fishing, I didn't check my email once. It was the first peaceful weekend I'd had in a decade. I knew exactly how it would play out. Saturday would be fine. The system had enough buffer to handle quiet weekends. Sunday night, the volume would start picking up for the Monday morning rush. The database tables would start getting full. By 8 a.m. Monday morning, the system would look for my scripts to run the cleanup protocols. It wouldn't find them. By 6 a.m. Monday, when the warehouse shift managers logged in to start loading trucks, things would feel sticky, slow. By 8 a.m., the errors would start popping up. Database timeout, inventory sync failure. I later learned exactly how it went down from a buddy of mine in the warehouse, Dave. At 7:15 a.m., the first driver pulled up to Bay 4. The loader scanned the pallet. Usually, the scanner beeps once, a happy, high-pitched bip, and prints a label. This time, the scanner let out a harsh, low-pitched buzz. It was the sound of a machine refusing to cooperate. The screen read, "Error 503, database connection timeout." The loader tried again. Bzz. He called the floor manager. The manager tried his master override code, thinking it was a permissions issue. Bzz. They assumed it was a glitch. They moved the truck to Bay 5. Same error. Bay 6. Same error. By 7:85 a.m., 15 trucks were backed up in the yard. The drivers were getting out of their cabs, lighting cigarettes, and yelling. These are union drivers. They get paid by the mile, not by the hour. If they're not moving, they're not happy. And when 30 truckers aren't happy, your parking lot becomes a very hostile environment. Inside the office, the customer service phones started ringing. Not one by one, all at once. It was like a wave crashing. Where is my shipment? Why is the tracking number invalid? Why can't I log into the portal?
The portal wasn't just down, it was showing raw SQL code errors to the customers. Imagine going to Amazon to buy shoes and seeing a page of matrix code instead. It looks amateur. It looks like a company that is going out of business. Gary was running around the office like a headless chicken. He stormed into the server room. He looked at the racks. The lights were all on. To him, hardware meant working. He didn't understand that the software soul had left the body. He called the offshore team. The poor guys on the other end of the phone had never seen our custom architecture. They were looking for manuals that didn't exist. They were asking for passwords to accounts I had created 10 years ago. By 9 a.m., the CFO, the money guy, walked down to Gary's office. He didn't yell, he just asked one question. Why is the revenue counter at 0? That was the moment Gary decided to call me. I was pouring my second cup of coffee Monday morning at 9:15 when my personal cell phone rang. It was an area code I recognized, the company main line. I let it go to voicemail. 5 minutes later, it rang again. This time, it was Gary's personal cell number. I took a slow sip of coffee, smiled, and answered. "Hello, this is Mark." "Mark? Thank God. You need to come in now." Gary's voice was an octave higher than usual. I could hear shouting in the background. It sounded like a riot in the warehouse. "Who is this?" I asked, feigning ignorance. "It's Gary, from the office. Look, something is wrong with the server. The warehouse can't print shipping labels. We have 40 trucks sitting in the loading bay doing nothing. We're losing thousands of dollars a minute. You need to fix it." "Gary, I don't work for you anymore, remember? You restructured me on Friday." "Look, I'm sorry, okay? Just tell us the password or something. The offshore team can't figure out why it stopped working." "There is no password, Gary. The system stopped working because you fired the only guy who knew how to maintain it. It requires daily manual intervention using proprietary tools I developed." Silence on the other end. Then desperation. "Okay, fine. We'll hire you back. Same salary. Just get in here." I laughed. I actually laughed out loud. "No thanks, Gary. I'm enjoying retirement. Besides, my price has gone up." "What do you mean?" "I mean, if you want me to step foot in that building and fix the disaster you created, you're hiring me as an external expert consultant." "Fine, fine. What's your rate?" I paused for dramatic effect. I mentally calculated my old hardware rate, doubled it, then doubled it again for pain and suffering. "My consultant rate is $450 an hour, with a minimum 40-hour block paid upfront, non-refundable. Oh, and I'll need that in writing before I get in my car." I heard him choke. $450 an hour? That's extortion. "That's the market rate for saving your job, Gary. Every minute you argue with me is another truck that doesn't leave the dock. Do you want my help or not?" He muttered something incoherent that sounded like a defeated yes. I got the contract via email 10 minutes later. I drove to the office slowly, obeying every speed limit. When I walked in, the panic was palpable. The warehouse manager looked ready to punch someone. Gary looked pale, sweating through his expensive suit. I sat down at my old desk, which they hadn't even cleaned off yet, plugged in my external hard drive, and ran my scripts. It took about 4 hours to untangle the data mess that had accumulated over the weekend. By 2 p.m., the labels started printing again. The trucks started moving. I ended up consulting for them for 2 weeks while they frantically tried to train the new offshore team on a 15-year-old system they didn't understand. I made more money in those 2 weeks than I had in the previous 6 months. The best part? The CEO, the board of directors actually, flew in on Thursday to investigate why they had lost nearly $250,000 in shipping delays in a single day. They interviewed me. I told them exactly what happened. I showed them the emails where Gary denied my requests for backups. I explained how he fired me without a handover plan. Gary doesn't work there anymore. I still don't work there either, by choice, but I heard the new VP of Operations is excessively nice to the IT staff. So, that's what happens when you remove a load-bearing employee for saving a few bucks. Sometimes, the whole house falls down on your head.